from WKGC Public Media in Panama City. This is ReelTalk, the place where you can join the cinematic conversations frame by frame each week. If movies are your thing, give us a ring, 850-772-6803. You can also send a message on the WKGC Facebook page or email us at wkgcnews@wkgc.org. Today we are talking about Jurassic World Rebirth, the latest movie in the Jurassic franchise, now in cinemas nationwide. I'm your host, Ryan R.L. Terry, and joining me today is first-time guest Kurt Figalis. Are you there, Kurt?
Hey, how are you?
Hey, there you are. I asked Kurt to join us today, not because we've been friends for over a decade, but he is a fellow cinephile and Jurassic Park fan. We've also ridden Jurassic Park River Adventure at Universal Studios Florida, Islands of Adventure, more times than we can count. But that isn't to suggest that our approaches to the Jurassic franchise and cinema in general are identical. Often we are at odds on films, but we still agree with each other more times than we disagree. So today's discussion should prove to have a lot of kinetic energy. And so, Kurt, something I like to ask of my first-time guests is what their favorite movies are. Could you share with us a few of your favorite movies and why they top your list?
So that list feels to change daily. So today, movies that are at the top is Paranorman from 2012, stop-motion animated. Little boy can speak to ghosts. Everyone treats him poorly because they don't understand him, and he's just trying to find his own place in the world. And what's really cool about this one is it's going to be re-released in October in 3D for the studio's anniversary. But that's always been a favorite of mine, especially if you like horror.
Yeah, what are some of your others?
Predestination with Ethan Hawke. A lot of people don't really know about this film, but it's a surprise hit. Basically, a man walks into a bar. Ethan Hawke's tells him, "Tell me your life story. If it's good enough, I'll give you this bottle of whiskey." So the guy starts to tell him his life story, and then it just evolves from there. The only thing about this movie is I don't like the editing, so start the movie 7 minutes in, because the first 7 minutes kind of spoil some of the plot points in the movie. So just start it at the title page and then go for it from there. It'll get a little bit weird, but it's worth the payoff.
Okay, and how about one more? You have one more for us?
One more, gotta go with Spider-Verse. Into the Spider-Verse, the first one in the franchise, because they took something that everybody already knew, and they truly reinvented the hero story. The animation is just stunning. Every page looks like it's out of a comic book. It's just, they reinvented the wheel with that one, and it's always a good one to go back to. You could watch that movie on mute and still know exactly what's going on.
And one that I was hoping you were going to mention, so I'm going to do it for you because we both love this film, and that is 1982's Poltergeist, directed by Tobe Hooper and Steven Spielberg. So of course, that is always up for a bit of contention, but that's what makes it, and part of what makes the movie fun to talk about. But I'm of the firm belief that Poltergeist benefits from both the approaches of Tobe Hooper and Steven Spielberg. And I know you're a big Poltergeist fan as well. The house at Halloween Horror Nights back in 20 whatever it was fantastic, and it's still one of my favorite houses to this day. So before we get into our movie today, any thoughts on Poltergeist? Because I was hoping you were going to mention it, so I'm going to make you do it now because it's one that's always fun to talk about.
I didn't think I should use every movie that starts with a letter P, but no, it's definitely a Steven Spielberg film. I mean, the dad is named Steven. It's got the family dynamic. It is a very Steven film, but it's a classic 1980s buildup of you follow the family. Yeah. Once you care about what's happening with the family, that's when the chaos and the real horror truly connects with you because you care about these people. So, and the effects and everything really hold up. Aside from one scene where everything's flying around the room, all the practical effects and everything in that movie hold up to this day.
And then Poltergeist also has one of the best jump scares in all of cinema. And contrary to what many believe, jump scares in and of themselves are not bad. You know, misused, overly used, poorly planned, poorly set up, schlocky jump scares. Those are the ones that we don't like. But in Poltergeist, we have that outstanding jump scare, which further develops the plot and further develops characters, and that's the scene that takes place in the kitchen. 1 minute, the chairs are around the table, and the camera moves. There's no discernible cuts. The camera moves down to the lower kitchen cabinet, then moves, pans up and tilts up to the kitchen table, and all of a sudden the chairs are all stacked up. And so I think that's a wonderful use of a jump scare, and certainly further develops our plot. But we're not here.
And
go ahead.
That was all one take. That was all completely practical. That whole scene. I've kind of read in and watched some videos about it, but that was all completely practical. What they did was once the camera moved, they removed the chairs, and then the chairs that are on the table are lowered from above the ceiling. But all of that was completely practical and happened in real time.
Yeah, it is very quick too. We're talking just a matter of seconds, and so that the human movement is really incredible. How smooth it was, how quickly it was done is truly the stuff of movies. It is the magic of movies. And as much as I'd love to go on continuing talking about Poltergeist, I'd rather us hop into the engine helicopter to head to our review of Jurassic World Rebirth. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. So while many saw the movie over the 4th of July holiday weekend, for those that may not have seen the movie, Kurt, what's it all about?
So Zora Bennett, played by Scarlett Johansson, she leads a team of skilled operatives into the most dangerous place on Earth, an island research facility for Jurassic World. The mission is to secure genetic material from the dinosaurs' DNA, which can offer life-saving benefits to mankind, something that we kind of already do now. But the top secret expedition becomes more risky as it basically just becomes a Jurassic World movie. Their discoveries on the island aren't what they expected them to be.
And certainly this movie may not have been what some expected it to be, but we'll get into that later. Before we get into the DNA of this movie, Kurt, what is your, say, 20,000-foot level opinion of it? In a nutshell, what did you make of the movie?
I enjoyed it. I walked in, I don't watch movie trailers, I barely read descriptions for movies like this. I'm like, it's Jurassic Park, I know what I'm going to get out of it. Am I going to have fun at the movie? Yeah. It was a bit of a slow start for me, but come the second half of the movie, it's exactly what you want it to be. And you leave the movie like, okay, I had fun for the movie. It wasn't too long, wasn't too short, it was just enough. So for a fun summer movie, it did the job good enough.
Okay. And so for me, I don't think I'm going to come in quite as high on this movie as you, but that's what I like, because that'll make the conversation a bit more engaging, a bit more dynamic. I feel that Jurassic World Rebirth certainly possesses that dino DNA that we're looking for, but it's missing strands and sequences, leaving an uneven and unforgettable or disposable movie. There are certainly things that I like about it, which we will get into, which are some of the same things that you like about the movie. But by and large, I don't think I'm going to be revisiting this one anytime soon. But let's I know to varying degrees that you and I both agree that the first two acts are weaker than the third. The third act being what I feel saves the movie, and I think what you feel leaves us on a much higher note than when we began with it. and I think that gets to a screenwriting problem that I want to get into later. But before we get into that, I want to spend some time talking about what we both liked about the movie. What are the scenes or sequences or elements or what stands out to you about Jurassic World Rebirth here at the top of our discussion?
There's a great sequence in the middle of the movie where I did not know a T-Rex could swim underwater. That was a lot of fun. I don't want to get in. I don't know how spoiler heavy we're going to get into this, but that was a really fun sequence. Once they're on the island and they're at the base, that's where the movie really gets going. And so it's the sequences again in the third act where that's what you're there for. You're there for them to run from the dinosaurs. How are they going to get it? Are we going to see the same thing that we've seen before? And there are the cliche characters. There are the cliche moments that you know are going to happen as the movie progresses, but they pull it off well enough. So I like that. It's just kind of this own standalone Jurassic World movie that it gives you what you want. It knows what the audience is expecting. It doesn't give you a $300 million budget movie. It's like, okay, this is what you want to see. That's how we're going to wrap up the movie, and that's kind of what they did.
Off air, you described Jurassic World Rebirth as the Rogue One of the Jurassic franchise. Why don't you talk a little bit more about why you feel this is this franchise's Rogue One? What in this movie, brings you to that conclusion, that assessment of this installment?
So I compare it to Rogue One because I'm not the biggest Star Wars fan. I don't dislike the movies, I just don't follow them. But Rogue One was a really good standalone movie, and that third act is just nonstop action. Great, super fun movie that stands on its own. If you've seen the other movies, you get the extra bonus Easter eggs. But if you've never seen any Star Wars, Rogue One stands on its own as a solid movie. Jurassic World Rebirth kind of does that same thing. You don't really need to know anything else. The only things that really happen in the movie, like there's a lot of music from the original movie, there's some artwork from the original movie, but it really doesn't care about what's happened before. The dinosaurs have been around for 30 years. Humans don't care anymore about them. They're not a roadside attraction. They're dying in today's climate. So they're kind of exiled to their own islands where they can survive. And you don't need to know anything else about Jurassic Park other than there's dinosaurs in the movie. But then it just kind of builds up to, again, have a really great finale. So do we ever need to see these characters again? No. Will we ever go back to this island again? No. But was it a fun movie? Yeah. It's fun, stands on its own, and doesn't need to relate to the other movies.
One of my favorite things in the movie, and unfortunately my list of things that I don't like as much definitely weighs a bit more than what I did like. But I'd be remiss if I did not mention that we get a cameo by the Dilophosaurus, which is my favorite dinosaur from Jurassic Park. And we had the little cameo of the Dilophosaurus in Jurassic World. It was the hologram, and now we've got Dilophosaurus. Albeit very briefly, I loved seeing the Dilophosaurus in just for that moment. And I realized Dilophosaurus was real, but Steven Spielberg's expression of the Dilophosaurus isn't exactly what fossil records would indicate, but it was grounded in fossil records enough to where I totally buy it. Because we still have, today we have that fringe lizard. I think it's in Australia that has the scale of the fringe around its head. So I enjoy.
When the original movie came out, that's what we thought.
Yeah.
But you got to remember, those movies are almost 30 years old now, so we didn't know what we knew now. So I still let that go because you got to run off the science from the 90s, not 2025.
And so something else I liked, which I want to get into here next, and while we've acknowledged that we're higher on the third act than the first two, there is a sequence that happens in the second act that was lifted directly out of Crichton's original novel and draft of the original Jurassic Park screenplay before David Koepp would step in and craft the final version for the screen. It's also the inspiration of the attraction at Universal Studios Hollywood and Islands of Adventure in Florida. Kurt, share with our listeners what that sequence is.
I kind of brought it up already, but there's a sequence where this family's trying to get to the facility on the island for their rescue, and they get on this air raft, and the T-Rex is right there. They wake him up from his nap. He's not too happy about that. No. And he follows them from the underwater while they're trying to row their boat out of the danger. And it's just, you can't see what's underwater, but he's coming for you.
Yeah, the T-Rex river chase scene is a wonderful scene, a sequence of scenes in the novel. So for those that haven't read the Jurassic Park novel, highly recommend go back and reading that. Also, Crichton's original Lost World novel, of which really only the trailer scene made it from the book to the screen, but the Lost World novel is really incredible. But this T-Rex chase sequence in the second act, fantastic. Very much harkens back to the sci-fi horror adjacency of the original movie. Of course, it does help that Crichton's original Jurassic Park novel and screenplay contained a similar sequence, and it was so well written. I feel that it is a short film in and of itself. We have setup, development, resolution, and it is what was the first thing to really grab me in the film. And I could rewatch that sequence over and over. Another fun fact that the river was the inspirations for one of the levels in the Sega and Super Nintendo game Jurassic Park. I believe it was Raptor Rampage. The river's in there. So we have this river in our theme parks and video games, and now we finally get this river sequence in the film. And I want to say it was in part responsible, the original scene responsible for the towards the end of Jurassic Park 3, but I think we get a better expression of Crichton's original vision of that river chase in this film. It's thrilling, it's scary, and I loved every second of the river chase there in the third act. Listeners, you are listening to Real Talk on 90.7 WKGC, and today we are talking about Jurassic World Rebirth, now in cinemas nationwide. My guest today is friend, cinephile, and fellow Jurassic fan, Kurt Figalis. When we come back, we'll be continuing our discussion. Have you seen Jurassic World Rebirth or have questions about it? Let us know. You can join our conversation by calling 850-772-6803. Send us a message on the WKGC Facebook page. You can also email us at wkgcnews@wkgc.org. We'll be right back after this break.
When Vice President Kamala Harris took over the Democratic ticket last summer, top Biden campaign staff remained in place.
Now, a lot of Harris aides think that was actually a fundamental flaw because the people who were driving the process were not her people.
A new book reveals the tensions between Harris and President Biden and how it led to the Democrats' failure in 2024. On the next All Things Considered from NPR News.
Weekdays at 3 p.m. on WKGC.
Welcome back to Real Talk on 90.7 WKGC. I'm your host, Ryan R.L. Terry, and today we are continuing our review of Universal Pictures and Amblin Entertainment's new release, Jurassic World Rebirth, directed by Gareth Edwards, now in cinemas nationwide. I am joined in studio digitally, by first-time guest Kurt Figalis. Want to talk about Jurassic World Rebirth with us this hour? Give us a call, 850-772-6803. Before the break, listeners, we were talking about what the film did very well, and I'd like to continue that discussion. Before we continue this tour on to explore where the film failed to deliver or was a bit weak. When we were talking yesterday about the movie, Kurt, you and I both agreed that the third act is fantastic. Let's talk about why it worked for us and seems to have worked for other critics and fans alike. What is it about the third act that just really grabbed you?
The third act, it gives you what you want from these movies. We don't want to watch people walk around an island. We don't want to watch them on a boat. We want to watch them interacting with the dinosaurs, being what dinosaurs really are. So when you're in that third act and you're finally at the genetic base where they were trying to get rescued after everything that's happened beforehand, you're finally seeing them doing what we want to do. The dinosaurs are smarter than we give them credit for. We're in their natural habitat. We're the outsiders at this point. How are we going to compete with them on their home base? And that's what we finally get from these movies. And it just got to the point where it was finally the action in the movie that you were waiting for the whole time. So I think because it was such a slow, kind of dull build, although the action is great, it's great because it's finally giving the audience what they want without dumbing it down with them or just trying to give them a $300 million huge budget movie. Just give us what we want. You don't need a big budget to give us decent action.
Other than that T-Rex, the river chase scene, which was such a highlight, was probably the only highlight for me up to that point. I do like how our film finds a way to leave us on a high note. You know, despite, in my opinion, what is slapdash screenwriting throughout the first and second acts, the third act is wildly entertaining, and I'd say even at times terrifying. And it almost for me anyway, compensates for the first hour and 45 minutes. You know, the weird dinos are monsters again, and the various chase sequences each offers something different, even though one is largely a recreation of the famous kitchen scene from the original movie. But it's a great scene, so why not find a way to pay homage to it? I liked it. A slightly different approach, but same idea. I enjoyed it well enough. We even have some other Easter eggs. There's a lot of Easter eggs in this movie, but in that particular scene. In the third act, I feel the stakes are raised to where we expect them to be in these movies, where we hope that they are in these movies, and the level of terror just really leaps off the screen. You know, so often movies start well and fail to stick that landing, but with this one, it almost fails to stick the launch, but it ultimately sticks the landing. And so everything all throughout the third act, including the end of the movie, and I don't want to mention who survives and who dies, but as our heroes are leaving the island, we have a variation of what that was like in the first movie. And so I also appreciate that. So the third act works incredibly well. I agree with you, Kurt, that it is very much a slow build up to that point. But even the original Jurassic Park has, after the climactic opening, our big event there at the beginning, to use a screenwriting term, it is more of a slow burn as we are introducing and developing these characters and some of the central arguments from Jurassic Park. So I think that's okay to be more methodically paced, you know, perhaps a slow burn, if there is substance there that's going to pay off, and I think that's what we're missing in the first and second acts. But that third act, incredibly exciting, and it plays so well on the big screen. Very much a movie to see on the big screen. I'm not sure how well the story is going to translate to the small screen, but watch it on the big screen, if for no other reason. The river chase sequence, and then the entire third act in the movie. Just like Dennis Nedry was an Achilles heel for John Hammond's original Jurassic Park. I think this movie also has a foundational weak point, resulting in a movie feeling, in my opinion, uneven, disjointed, and ultimately forgettable or disposable, might be more accurate. The screenplay by David Koepp, whom crafted the original Jurassic Park screenplay for the screen after Crichton penned the original version, he comes back to lend his talent to the Jurassic franchise again. But I think the screenplay is where we have a lot of issues in here. What are your thoughts, Kurt, on the screenplay, the screenwriting for Jurassic World Rebirth? And I'd like to talk about the plotting first. What are your thoughts on the plot of our movie, or even its the sub? There's additionally a subplot in here which we can talk about in a minute. But what did you think about the plotting here in Jurassic World Rebirth?
For me, going back to think about the movie after I was done was, I feel like they wrote the movie out of order. Mm-hmm. I feel like one of the first things he wrote was that great scene with the T-Rex in the water. Mm-hmm. They wrote the plot points of the third act of what do they want what situation are the characters going to be in? What do we want the dinosaurs to do? They wrote these specific parts. So then the first act of the movie was, how do we get the family to the boat so that we can have that great scene with the T-Rex? Mm-hmm. That's with the subplot is the one with the family. Yeah. That whole sequence now feels like they were just writing them to get to this plot point because they wanted this to happen. That's what the movie feels to me, and that's why I don't really care that much about the secondary family or even the main characters in the movie, because they were just writing to get them to a scene rather than giving them a movie. So it's like when you're having a discussion with somebody and you're waiting for them to stop talking so you can respond. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing here. You were just writing to get them somewhere, not listening to what your characters were saying.
You bring up a really great point there, Kurt, is that one of the big weak points of the Achilles heel, are these characters. And you're right. I also didn't care about any of these characters. The whole time I'm like, okay, when are they going to be eaten? Particularly the character of the boyfriend, who was absolute garbage. It should have been eaten. It should have been eaten really fast.
The father too.
And so he is just like, you're letting this guy just walk all over you. If he's been sleeping all day and it's his turn to drive the boat, you make him drive that boat. You don't give in to his selfish behavior. And so the father should have been a much stronger character in that. Just call out poor behavior. Call it out. If you don't call it out, it's going to continue. And it does kind of continue for the rest of the movie. But it's not just the boyfriend. He's the easy one. He's the easy one to pick at. But the rest of these characters are just, they're not developed very well. One of the strengths in the original Jurassic Park is it's character driven. We are vested in these characters. They're each contributing something a little bit different. Their talents, their knowledge, skills, and abilities complement one another, and they're all needed to form this cohesive, web of characters. And we just don't really have that in here. The family does feel just thrown in there to get us to the river. And it's just, well, if you wanted to include the river scene, why not just find a way of writing our main characters into the river? There definitely would have been ways to have done that. And while I'm pretty hard on Koepp's writing of the characters, I'll tell you something I appreciate, and I don't know if you see it this way or not, Kurt. But I appreciate the minimalistic cast of characters compared to the cast of characters we've had in the other Jurassic World movies. We have, it's unfortunate we have these two competing groups, our mercenaries and our family, but I like how we have a few characters to focus on. I had hoped that by having fewer characters in the movie, that would have led to greater development of these characters. But ultimately, I find the family story is, uninteresting. The plot feels extraneous, and ultimately, to your point, little importance, anything else that happens in the movie. And I feel we have two different movie ideas, one centered on our mercenaries and the other on the family. And I think by itself, either would have made for a better movie than putting them together. But by putting them together, we have kind of a muddled and crowded film. But before we move on to our next item that I want to touch on, do you have any other thoughts on not necessarily the casting, but the characters themselves? Anything else you want to mention?
With the characters, the family they're frustrating. Mm-hmm. And even the mercenaries are frustrating because I love Scarlett Johansson as an actor. I think she's wonderful. She's one of the best people out there right now, no matter what she does, but she's not utilized well. Mm-hmm. She's supposed to be this great mercenary, but then when she's out in the field, she doesn't seem like she knows what she's doing. Yeah. Same thing with the father. The father is chartering this boat across the Atlantic with his daughters and the boyfriend. Yeah. But then he doesn't know how to handle an emergency, really. And one thing that really frustrated me is the family's boat sinks and they get rescued, and then the boat that they were on also gets attacked and sinks. The boyfriend jumps in the water, goes after his girlfriend, and saves her life. The father doesn't turn around and say thank you. Right away, he still kind of treats him like a dirtbag. There's no, that was the redemption moment for the boyfriend to step up, but then he just keeps going back to this comic relief character, and nobody grows from any of the experiences. Across all the characters, there's no growth in them with all that they survived and managed to get away from. Yeah. They leave the movie the same people they were going in, and that's, again, where the screenwriters weren't listening to what their characters were saying or doing. Yeah. They were just writing them into plot points.
Yeah, you hit on a great point there, Kurt. I'm so glad you bring that up. It's the character growth, that is missing in here. They're largely the same at the end of the movie as they are at the beginning. And those are ultimately uninteresting characters, regardless of what type of hero's journey your character or characters go on. There should always be some kind of growth. It can be positive growth or negative growth. But here we have just kind of neutral growth, which is of little interest, narratively speaking. And how they positively developed or negatively developed would have given us much more interesting characters to look at. Something else that I want to touch on, with this movie, and this is in some of the advertising for the movie. Something that the movie itself describes and director Gareth Edwards posits is that the public is tired of dinosaurs. What do you think of what the movie has to say about the prehistoric creatures and our fascination or lack thereof with them?
I think it's something that should have been more explored. Mm-hmm. So, and it is true that after 30, 40 years of dinosaurs basically in your backyard, you just be like, okay, that's just another thing that happened. So, I mean, it's a great example of Floridians and gators. If I see one in my backyard, it's just a gator in my backyard. It doesn't strike me as out of the ordinary. So once dinosaurs are the ordinary thing around, what do you have to do to keep the people interested? And it's something that has been a touch point for previous movies. That's how we got the Dinosaurus Rex. That's how we've gotten all these other things, like make them scarier, make them bigger, more teeth, more this. You have to keep people coming back because the parks are a business. Yeah. So it is a point to touch on, but this movie just takes that hot point and then throws it away. It doesn't really want to do anything with it.
No.
So it does feel like it's some kind of realism within that part.
Yeah, it certainly is a missed opportunity for some thoughtful subtext or giving this movie some depth, because There's a kind of an adjacent topic, maybe a bit more meta in nature, that I'm going to get into after our next break. But before we go into our break, I think you're right. We were introduced to these dinosaurs and how they've been presented in cinema now. I'm not talking about the way dinosaurs were presented during the days of Ray Harryhausen, who is a brilliant stop motion creature effects animator. Listeners, if you want to look at some old school movie magic, check out Ray Harryhausen's work that he did throughout the 1940s and 50s. Because we wouldn't have what we have today if it weren't for pioneers like Ray Harryhausen. But in terms of how they're presented now, which dates back to 93, I think the director is right in that Edwards is right that we've gotten to a point to where the dinosaurs themselves lack interest. They lack draw. It worked for the first Jurassic Park. Of course, dinosaurs are only on screen for, about 15 minutes out of the entire 2 hours and 15-minute movie. We only have the dinosaurs for about 15 minutes. And even to an extent in the Lost World Jurassic Park, the dinosaurs are still of interest. But by the time we get to Jurassic Park 3, I think we're getting to what Edwards is talking about and what Claire talks about in Jurassic World. That she refers to them as assets. And to quote the movie and to quote the pre-show at Velocicoaster at Islands of Adventure, what do they want? More teeth. And so they want to see more. Teeth. And so it gives me reason for pause, because, is that really, have they kind of ran, their, are they about to become extinct? Have they ran their course? Is there a way that a filmmaker can make them interesting again? I certainly think it is. I think there is. Have to rethink how they are being presented, and I feel that that how they should be presented is in a movie in which it's a character-driven piece that happens to have dinosaurs in it, because at the end of the day, we like seeing dinosaurs on the screen, even if they're not quite as fascinating or quite the draw they used to be. It's all in the approach. And so I think, if nothing else, this movie is should show us, whether you're a filmmaker yourself, listening, or if you're just a movie fan, what this is telling us, listeners, is the way that they're now being presented just doesn't quite have the same draw that it used to, which leads me into what I want to talk to after the break. You are listening to Real Talk on 90.7 WKGC, and today we are talking about Jurassic World Rebirth, now in cinemas nationwide. My guest today is friend, cinephile, and fellow Jurassic fan, Kurt Figalis. When we come back, we're going to talk about what this movie and how quickly it was written and produced has to say about the current state of cinema and audience behavior. Have you seen Jurassic World Rebirth or have questions about it? Let us know. Join the conversation this hour. Maybe you want to talk about the state of cinema. 850-772-6803. You can send us a message on the WKGC Facebook page, or email us at wkgcnews@wkgc.org. We'll be right back after this break.
People are who build community. The self-starters, the friendly neighbors, the ambitious workers. And that's exactly who our members are. We're PCU. And with us, banking is made better. So whether you need a rewards checking account, financial products that assist with travel, easy business loans, or affordable auto loans, come see us so we can build the community together. Panhandle Credit Union. Banking made better. Federally insured by NCUA. Equal housing lender.
6 months after the Eaton fires, Altadena businesses are trying to make a comeback.
My worry is there's just so much building that has to take place that are there enough contractors, enough engineers, architects?
I'm Kristen Schwab, checking in on the effort to rebuild next time on Marketplace.
Weekdays at 5 p.m. on WKGC.
Welcome back to Real Talk on 90.7 WKGC. I'm your host, Ryan R.L. Terry, and today we are continuing our review of Jurassic World Rebirth, directed by Gareth Edwards, now in cinemas nationwide. I am joined today by first-time guest and friend, cinephile, fellow Jurassic fan, Kurt Figalis. Want to talk about Jurassic World Rebirth with us this hour? Give us a call, 850-772-6803. Before the break, Kurt, we were talking about the highs and lows, the plotting and characters of Jurassic World Rebirth. What I'd like to do now is look at what this movie can tell us about the state of cinema in general and audience behavior. Do you think that this movie is a harbinger of things to come, or is a kind of canary in the cave for the state of cinema?
I don't think it has much to say about the future state of cinema. I think it was just, it's time for another Jurassic movie. The holidays are coming out. Nobody's claimed the holiday weekend yet. So let's just push the movie out because we know we're going to make $100 or $200 million off of it.
Yeah, when I watched the movie and was thinking about it as I was writing my article last week, something that came to mind was in part inspired by Gareth Edwards. People just aren't interested in dinosaurs anymore. Claire talks about it in Jurassic World, as we mentioned before the break, and even in this movie opens up with dinosaurs in the world, but unable to thrive for a variety of reasons. One of which is just a much different climate than it was when they were around the first go around. And it got me to thinking that if there's something that can be closely read in this movie about its commentary on the state of cinema, and when I look at the history of the movie, and from concept to distribution, it's about 2 years. Maybe a little bit more, a little bit less. I believe the screenplay was finished in 2023, and then went into production from there. I think studios are afraid to take time to craft a thoughtful picture, even if it is a blockbuster, even if it's intended to be a summer blockbuster. Because of the rate at which they feel they have to crank out motion pictures, like streaming services add content to their platforms, to where it seems like every month, every 2-3 months, there's some new series on some streaming platform somewhere, and it's like being in a microwave society when you can cook, if you want to call it that, in a microwave, but it's seldom, if ever, as good as cooking on the stove, simply because of the nature of how a microwave works. It's intentionally designed to speed up the process, but in speeding up the process, we're losing something. I know when you cook vegetables in a microwave, sure, you can steam your broccoli in the microwave, but the way a microwave works is you lose a lot of the nutrients from the broccoli as opposed to steaming them on the stovetop. And I think that's what we have here in this movie and others, is feeling pressured to just crank out content. It almost doesn't matter what it is or what the quality is. Just have to crank out something to get on our streaming service to compete with some other streaming service. And in that, we're losing the art of cinema, the art of motion pictures, and so when looking back at this movie, I'm reminded of that. I'm also reminded of the attention spans. The attention span, used to be on average, about 45 minutes. When I was in school, when you were in school, but now instead of being 45 minutes, it's probably now 4 to 5 minutes, and for some, it might even be 4 to 5 seconds. And I think that sociological behavior, that audience behavior, is now being felt in these movies because of how fast they have to put them out. There's not enough time to spend on crafting the screenplay, rewrite after rewrite, to make sure it is showcase perfect and on the film, which is also in part why many filmmakers, if not most, opt for CGI versus practical effects. So that could be an entirely other discussion. But those are some of the takeaways I have from this movie. So when you look at it, Kurt, do you get any sense of the effects of changing audience behavior and just the very nature of streaming services? Do you get any sense that this movie is affected by those things?
So my audience experience was a little different than yours because I saw it with the general public. And the general public, after the action movies, they would applaud with it. They were there for the ride. They were having fun. So they were in for it. So theater I was in was having a good time with the movie. But it's just, I think it falls to a matter of how much is the studio interfering with the production? Are they trusting the people they hired to do the job, or are they going to rush it because they want to just get in the way? And there's countless times where you can watch a movie where you can see something's being done because the algorithm the studio wants is forced into the movie, which I do feel plays into effect a little bit with this movie. That's why the kids are in the movie and that family's in the movie, because there has to be kids in a Jurassic movie. But I don't think this movie suffered as much from the studio interference as previous Jurassic Park movies, because it wasn't shoehorned in as much of forcing a franchise to start. Because it does really feel like a singular movie. It doesn't leave you with a cliffhanger or anything.
So, rounding out our discussion here, Kurt, any last thoughts on Jurassic World Rebirth? Maybe something we haven't touched on that you would like to share, moving on to where we think this movie falls in the rest of the franchise. So anything else you'd like to mention?
We were a little harsh on the movie, but the good parts are good. It is still worth going to see it in the theaters, like you said. It's not a bad movie by any means. Is it one you're going to go back to often? Maybe not. But for this summer blockbuster movie, for a holiday movie, it's still worth going to see in theaters because those fun parts are really fun, and you're going to leave the theater with a smile on your face being like, okay, I had fun. I had fun for 2.5 hours, and that's all I really needed out of the movie. But probably just not going to go back to see it again.
I believe you saw it in 4DX Auditorium, which I mentioned on the show last week when I was talking about F1, the movie. So what the added effects from the seats and everything, do you feel that it added to the movie, or did you feel that those elements were distracting?
It does add to the movie. I don't do it all the time. I saw it with a friend who really wanted to have that upgraded experience. So I was like, well, if you pay for it, I'll do it. So he paid for the upgraded experience because we had the Regal Pass. So it's not that much of an upgrade, but it's not too distracting. The guy next to me had a beer, which had no lid on it. And I think half of that beer was on the floor. And if you do those experiences, just make sure you know the seats are going to move a lot. Get something with a lid on it. But I don't feel like it's too distracting because there's more than just like the seats moving. They do fog, they do lighting, they do sense. So when the flashing lights were behind the characters in the theater. So there is a lot more than the moving seats. I understand it's a gimmick, but for a movie like this, it's a little bit more fun and enjoyable.
Very cool. So now we have to talk about where this movie ranks with the rest of our Jurassic movies. So I'd like to take a moment to rank them here as we get ready to start closing out our hour. We still have about 8 to 10 minutes together, listeners, but as we begin to close out, I want to rank them. It's always fun to rank movies in a big franchise. It did something very similar with Mission Impossible after The Final Reckoning came out, several weeks ago. So, Kurt, you're my guest today. So how do you rank the Jurassic movies? Where does Jurassic World Rebirth fit into your ranking?
Feels pretty easy to rank these movies. The originals are always going to be at the top. So the original Jurassic Park, which I saw as a kid in a drive-in. That's always going to be at the top of the list. That's what started it all. Mm-hmm. I did put Jurassic World as my number 2 slot, just because it did kind of restart and re-energize the franchise, with something a little bit more interesting. I followed up with Jurassic Park 2 and Jurassic World Part 2. Mm-hmm. I put Rebirth after that.
Okay.
I put it before the third movies of Jurassic Park or Jurassic World, which was at the bottom. Mm-hmm. But it kind of fits right after that. It's this fun, enjoyable movie. It doesn't try to compete with itself. It doesn't try to talk down to its audience or shoehorn in cloning or all these other ridiculous sci-fi things.
Yeah.
It knows what it is, and it gives it to you.
For me, of course, and I think most people would agree, I don't think anybody would ever not do this, but Jurassic Park, number 1, followed by The Lost World Jurassic Park, except that third act. I think that if we were to take the first 2 acts from The Lost World Jurassic Park and match it with the third act of this movie, I think we'd have a great film. So I think if we should, if we could ever go back in the Wayback Machine and influence our screenwriters, I'd say, hey, take these first 2 acts, but this third act that's not going to be written for 25 years from now, why don't you add that one in there? But I'd put Lost World, Jurassic Park as number 2, followed by Jurassic World. I really enjoyed Jurassic World. I love going back to the island. I like the whole idea of addressing what it would be like if dinosaurs were at a theme park and how the world would react to them. And I think decisions that Claren Part was making are probably not unlike real world decisions, if that were to be the case. After the Lost World, after Jurassic World, I would put Jurassic World Rebirth, even though I don't care for the first 2 acts. I love the T-Rex, chase scene from the second act. I think the third act is fantastic in Rebirth. And then after that, I would put Fallen Kingdom, followed by Jurassic World Dominion, a.k.a. More insects than dinosaurs. So that's how I would rank them. I think the movies moving forward would benefit if the directors and or screenwriters would go back and read Crichton's original Jurassic Park and Lost World novels. Not necessarily to adapt those, Jurassic Park again or The Lost World again for the screen. Although The Lost World, I mentioned earlier, the only thing out of the novel that made it to the screen was, as far as big sequences, was the trailer sequence, which is why the trailer sequence is great. But I think if they were to go back, they would get a better idea of how to craft a thoughtful story that's also terrifying and has those blockbuster elements in there. But Kurt, we are nearing the end of our hour together. As much fun as I'm having talking about the franchise spawned by my favorite movie of all time, and I know one of your favorites, I'm afraid we do need to begin to wrap things up and leave the island behind, for now anyway. But before we do, is there anything else on Jurassic World Rebirth or the Jurassic franchise, anything else we talked about today that you'd like to share before we close?
Listen to your own movie. You opened this movie saying, kids today don't care about dinosaurs. Give me a Jurassic Park movie where you're not shoehorning children into the movie to give me somebody to care about. Give me a movie where it's just the adults on the island and make them more interesting. I don't need to see kids in the movie to feel like I have a connection to the character or there's something at stake. You could do that with just adults. That's what I want to see.
Yeah, I think
if the kids aren't interested in dinosaurs, then why are they in the movie?
I think where that comes from, Kurt, is when you go back and watch the original film, there is the subtext or the theming of found family or parenting. But it's not about the family. Yes, Dr. Alan Grant becomes a de facto father for Lex and Tim, but it's not about them as a family. It's really about Dr. Alan Grant's journey in recognizing that these two children have needs for an adult to protect them, to guide them through the jungle. And I like how their relationship develops, but they don't start out as a family, and that's part of his character journey. But just to have them, I agree, doesn't serve its purpose. It worked that way because it wasn't about that. That was something really rich that was additionally added in, but it wasn't at the center of the movie. And I think a lot of what we've said today is it's the characters. The characters, even though it's a movie called Jurassic Park or Jurassic World, it's the characters that are going to make or break the movie, particularly because, and you said it, Kurt, that people don't find dinosaurs as interesting as they used to. Whether we're talking the real dinosaurs in the movie, or we're talking about how we as the audience view dinosaurs today, that because they're not as interesting as they were 32 years ago, what'll make or break the movie are the characters. Thank you so much, Kurt, for making time to come on the show today. It's been great. Looking forward to the next time we're at Universal again together and can ride River Adventure, and I hope to have you back on the show in the future. Listeners, if you missed any of today's episode or to listen to past shows from WKGC, you can find us on a podcatcher near you. So look for WKGC on your podcast service of choice. Next week, we will be rerunning the Jaws 50th anniversary special because I'm speaking at the historic Tampa Theater on Sunday the 13th. So I'll be presenting Psycho and hosting a talkback afterwards. So if you're going to be in the Tampa Bay area next weekend, you may want to consider coming out to the theater where I'll have a chance to meet you and can talk about one of the greatest films of all time. Stay tuned for Jazz in a Minor Key with Walter Hale coming up next, followed by All Things Considered starting at 3 o'clock. And thanks to all of you for listening. I hope you'll tune in again next week, same time, same place, for more Real Talk on 90.7 WKGC.